I can't believe I agreed to go camping in the woods with my friends. It was supposed to be a fun adventure, but it turned into the scariest experience of my life. I'm still shaking as I write this down. So, we arrived at the campsite on a sunny Friday afternoon. The trees were tall and thick, casting long shadows that made me feel a little uneasy. But hey, it's just a forest, right? What could go wrong? We spent the afternoon setting up tents and just hiking a little bit, so we never trailed too far away from the campsite. As night fell, we gathered around the crackling campfire, sharing spooky stories and devouring s'mores. The air was filled with laughter and excitement, and I tried my best to forget about that nagging feeling at the back of my mind. I'm just not a typical outdoors person, but I didn't want to miss the awesome opportunity with my friends. Then, out of nowhere, we heard this strange noise. It was like a deep growl echoing through the trees. We all froze, our eyes darting around, searching for the source of the sound. We knew there were bears in this forest, but we didn't think we'd actually see one. Then, from the darkness of the forest, a massive bear emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing in the firelight. We screamed and scattered in different directions, trying to escape the terrifying beast. I ran blindly through the woods, my heart pounding in my chest. But the bear was fast. It kept getting closer and closer, and I could hear its heavy footsteps behind me. Just as I was about to give up hope, I surprised myself and climbed up a tree. It felt like it was my only chance for survival. In the darkness, I could hear the bear scratching at the base of the tree, growling angrily. It was dark, so dark that I could barely see its dark fur moving below me. I'm not sure how much time passed, but the bear's growls slowly faded away. I cautiously peeked below, and I was relieved to see no sign of the bear. Maybe it had given up and left. So I made my way back to the campsite, looking over my shoulder with every step. When I got back to the camp, my friends were already there. They put the fire out and were talking about a plan to come and find me. Needless to say, they were thrilled when they saw me finally stumbling back to the camp. This was a terrifying experience, even more so for me because the bear chased me and me alone. After the adrenaline finally calmed down, we decided to go to bed. My vote was to leave the camp altogether, but one of my friends convinced me it would be more dangerous to travel the woods in the darkness. We'd be safe in our tents. We had 2 tents set up at the campsite, 4 of us in each tent. I tossed and turned all night. I just couldn't relax or get comfortable. Hours later, I thought I could hear the sound of the footsteps outside the tent. I tried to silence my breathing and listen outside of the tent. Then I heard the growl again. I felt sick to my stomach. Then the growl became louder. The bear was right outside of the tent. I could hear the heavy breathing and the growling. I woke up my friends, who had the same reaction as me. We were whispering to each other about what to do. There was no way we'd be able to get out of the tent and make a run for it. Then the most unsettling thing happened to us. The zipper of the tent started to unzip. I was thinking to myself, could bears unzip tents? When the zipper was nearly unzipped all the way, my friend took the backside of his flashlight and struck the beast right on top of its head. But we didn't hear a growl. We heard a groan. The groan of a man. We jumped out of the tent and couldn't believe our eyes. It was in fact a man wearing some sort of fur cape on his back. The man got to his feet and stared at us with these horrible-looking eyes. He growled like an animal and then ran full speed into the woods. We all panicked. My friends in the other tent got up and witnessed the entire incident as well. We all ran in the opposite direction of the man, not caring how dark it was outside. We didn't stop running until we reached the main road. It was about a mile walk to the parking lot where our car was, and we didn't care. We made that walk and drove to a 24-hour diner and stayed there until dawn. In the morning, we went back and retrieved all of our things, only to find that the entire campsite had been destroyed. Whoever this man was, he came back again and went through all of our belongings and destroyed the tents. We reported the incident to the proper authorities, but I don't think anything had ever been done, and honestly, it probably won't be. I have no idea who that man was, or what he intended, but judging by the campsite, he intended on doing us harm. All I do know for sure is that is the last time I will ever go camping. I'm about to share the freakiest camping experience I have ever had. Honestly, forget camping. This was probably the creepiest experience I ever had in general. It was supposed to be a fun getaway with my friends, but it turned into a nightmare that still gives me goosebumps. We got to the camp located near a beautiful lake, surrounded by towering trees. The place seemed so peaceful at first, but little did we know what awaited us in those dark woods. Since none of us were really the outdoors type of people, we decided it was best for us to rent a cabin instead of using tents. On the first night, we sat around the campfire, laughing and sharing ghost stories. We heard a rustling sound in the distance. We dismissed it, thinking it was just some kind of critter roaming around. But then we saw it. It was 3 girls emerging from the shadows. Their eyes were fixated on us. They looked like they were probably about our age, but something was off about them. Their expressions were blank, and they moved silently, almost like they were gliding through the air. We tried to be friendly, but they didn't respond. They just stood there, staring at us with their cold, lifeless eyes. It was very weird and unnerving, but it wasn't super scary. We all sort of just figured it was some kind of weird prank. Either way, uneasiness settled over our camp, and we decided to retreat back to the cabin. But as we lay there, trying to sleep, we all swore we could hear the faint whispers outside. It sounded like their voices drifting through the darkness. I thought that it could have absolutely been our imaginations making us think that the wind was the sound of whispers, since we all were on edge. Eventually, the noises stopped, and I assumed whatever prank was happening was now over. Everyone eventually went to sleep, even myself, even though I was up for hours wondering what the heck the deal was with those 3 girls. The next day we explored the woods, hoping to forget about the eerie encounter. But wherever we went, those girls seemed to show up, usually watching us from a distance. It felt like they were playing a twisted game, stalking us as we tried to enjoy our camping trip. As the hours went by, their presence became more intrusive. As we headed back to the cabin, we noticed strange markings on some of the trees, and weird trinkets of some kind hanging from the tree branches. When we were close to the cabin, we noticed that our names were carved into the trees next to the campsite. When we finally walked back to the cabin, we found that the campsite was completely vandalized. Inside and outside of the cabin were torn apart. Our belongings were scattered, and more strange encrypted messages were written on the dirt outside of the cabin. This was the final straw, and we decided to pack things up and get out of there before things could escalate any further. Prank or not, it was clear that this had gone too far. We grabbed our essentials and left the campsite in a hurry, but the girls followed us, their pale faces appearing from behind trees. With every step we took, it seemed like they were moving closer behind us. We started to sprint through the woods, and now their eerie laughter could be heard echoing all around us, fueling our terror. I remember running as fast as I could, looking behind me, but I saw nothing. I could only hear their laughter. We finally reached the car and basically threw everything into the trunk, and I tried to speed off as fast as we could. I remember as we were pulling away, I could see their 3 faces peering through the forest line, and they were just standing there, completely still. We reported this incident to the authorities, but the girls were never found. To this day, I still wonder who they were and what drove them to torment us. I wish I knew if it was in fact a prank, or if it was something much darker and sinister. It just goes to show that even in the most beautiful of places, evil can still strike. I'm writing this story just days removed from the most traumatic experience of my life. I wanted to share all the details while they're still fresh in my mind. I'm from a fairly bigger city in New York, but not New York City. Once a year, for as long as I can remember, I would travel up north to the mountains with my family and stay in a cabin. This was a tradition that I kept long into my 20s, and I still go today. Well, maybe not anymore. I'm now 26 years old and traveled to this beautiful cabin with my girlfriend Rachel. This place was beautiful. It sits high in the mountains and overlooks a lake. From the back deck, I could see the lake and a whole plethora of mountains overlooking the lake. Escaping to this nirvana was a peace of mind I looked forward to every year. But after what happened just a few days ago, I may never go camping again. The story started about 2 hours from my cabin destination. Rachel and I stopped at a rest stop to get some snacks and coffee for the rest of our trip. And as we pulled away to get back onto the highway, we noticed a large white truck with 2 kayaks pull up behind me. We laughed, assuming that this truck would probably be following us all the way to our destination, as there are many spots to kayak up in those parts of the state. Our theory seemed to be right. We were about 10 minutes from our cabin, and the truck was still following us. This did not set off any red flags because, like I said, this was a popular place for tourists, especially this time of year. We eventually reached our street. We turned onto the dirt road, and as we turned, we noticed the white truck kept driving. We jokingly laughed and said goodbye to our traveling companion. Our cabin was about 100 yards or so down this dirt road. The place was like a dream home. All wood finishes, surrounded by lots of trails, and as I previously stated, the beautiful view of the lake. That first night we were there was absolutely lovely. The weather was perfect. We sat on the back deck, stared at the stars, and just listened to the nature all around us. It was pure bliss. The next day, Rachel and I went into town to see some shops and to get closer to the water. We had a bit of a laugh when, to our surprise, we saw the white truck. It was parked in a lot by the marina. The only reason why we knew it was the same truck was because it had the same dirty kayaks attached to the top. I jokingly said to Rachel that if the driver were there, I would have introduced myself, but there was no driver anywhere near the vehicle. Nothing more than just a crazy coincidence, we thought. After spending a couple of hours in town, we finally went back to the cabin to enjoy the scenery for the rest of the afternoon and evening. At roughly 7 p.m., I thought I heard some rustling in the trees to the left of the deck. I grabbed my phone to take a picture of whatever animal emerged, but I couldn't make out any details of any animal or anything of the sort. It was actually kind of eerie. I could clearly hear the breaking of branches and rustling of leaves, but I couldn't make out anything. Then I thought I heard what sounded like a cough coming from my right side now. I immediately turned to the right and started looking into the woods from that side, but again, I saw nothing. I suddenly had that sickening feeling that I was being watched. I sat there like a deer in the headlights, just waiting to be attacked on all sides by whatever was in the woods. But nothing ever came. Later that night after we ate, I told Rachel about the experience I had, and she turned as white as a ghost. She had told me earlier when she went walking through the woods, she thought that she had also heard coughing, but she just chalked it up to her imagination. We talked about maybe calling the property owner or even the police just in case, but we both agreed we were being neurotic. That night we decided to sleep out in the living room in front of the fireplace. The living room was amazing. It had 2 huge sliding glass doors that overlooked the lake and mountains. We figured we would sleep there, stare at the moonlight and the stars, and then wake up to the sunlight shining in. Unfortunately, this did not go as planned. We were both jolted awake shortly after 2 a.m. to a loud bang. I sprung up from the pillows and blankets that we laid on the floor to witness the single most horrifying thing I have ever seen. There was a man at the sliding door. At least I think it was a man. The figure was tall and menacing, and most frightening was his mask. He had an owl mask on, but the mask had antlers on it as well. The figure had one hand up and positioned on the glass door, almost as if he was waving, and the other was concealed behind his back. He was not moving at all, still as a statue. Rachel screamed in a panic, and somehow was able to utter the words, "Call 911." I could have gone out there, but I was too scared this man had a weapon. Then I remembered hearing the noises in the woods from all sides, so I began to wonder if there were others out there as well. I thought it would be safest to stay inside and just keep my eyes on the figure. The cops took about 10 minutes to get there, and that was the longest 10 minutes of my entire life. Rachel cried and screamed. I had a knife from the kitchen in my hands. We just stood face to face with this thing, like a Western stare down. It did not move. It just stood still, with one arm up and the other behind its back, the entire duration of the 10 minutes. Finally, when we saw the lights of the car, the thing retreated into the woods. I ran outside to meet the police officer, who had no sense of urgency whatsoever. I tried to explain that we had an intruder and that he ran into the woods, but the cop just kept telling me to relax and explain to him what happened. Long story short, the cop was no help at all. Basically, he told us that the locals don't like tourists, and he was sure that this was just some kind of sick prank by some teenagers from the town, and that we had nothing to fear. That's why the figure didn't cause us any real harm, because it was just a prank. At least that's what the cop said. Rachel and I were completely unsatisfied by this. The cop came, took our statement, and essentially left. Rachel and I sat in the living room, still completely shook to our core with fear. It was now a little after 3:30, and we decided this was enough. We were going to get our stuff and leave, probably stay in a hotel for the night and contact the property owner in the morning. We packed our stuff incredibly fast and made our way to the door, and once again were struck frozen in fear. There at the front door were two figures, smaller than the first one, but still wearing owl masks. Out of fear, we turned and ran to the back door, and the figure from before was there again. The taller figure with the owl mask and the antlers. We called the police again, but we were scared we didn't have 10 minutes to wait this time. In unison now, all three figures tried to open the doors. We ran to the master bathroom, which had a window in it, and climbed out. We tried to be as quiet as we could as we ran down the dirt road. It was pointless to scream for help because there were no houses anywhere near our cabin. We got to the main road and called the police again. The cop met us on the side of the road. We said we weren't going back to the house. The cop agreed to take us to a hotel in town, and as we drove several yards down the road, both Rachel and I became frantic. There, parked into the thick brush on the side of the road, was the white truck with the kayaks. We told the cop, who still seemed a bit apprehensive, but he took our statement. The next day we went back to the house with some police. It made us sick to our stomachs. The entire house was ransacked and destroyed. All the windows were broken, and all the decorations smashed up in the cabin. In our master bedroom, where all of our luggage still sat, were 3 owl masks, with 3 knives laying on the bed. When the cops went back to investigate the white truck, it was gone. Luckily, the property owner had some cameras on the outside of the property and saw that the 3 figures stalking the outside of the house for hours. Even more terrifying was that the entire day and night before, they were stalking the house as well. I'm just so thankful that we somehow got out of this situation unharmed. The police unfortunately had no answers for us. They couldn't locate the truck, and they had no idea who these people were or if they had any intentions of attacking anyone else in the mountain town. This may go without saying, but I will never be returning to any cabin like this again. It's only been a few days, so I'm still a little shaken up, but I'm sure that this will haunt me for the rest of my life.